preventive techniques, okay, detection techniques, and corrective techniques. So this is what we have mentioned in order to really mitigate the risk. And I mentioned to you guys so many times before that if you are in an interview and they ask you what is really your job inside the organization, and the first answer should comes to your mind is basically, I'm here to reduce the risk of cyber attacks. How we would reduce the risk of cyber attacks? By implementing risk management strategy. And the risk management strategy is basically is to identify risks, okay, to really have a prioritize your risk, and then finally to treat the risk, okay. And once we agreed about the treatment, we said that we have different type of treatment, and one of the treatment that we really likes is when we implement controls. And the type of controls that exist, we mentioned we have preventive control, detection controls, and basically finally corrective controls. And in the protection controls, we have spent it sometimes talking about, what is identity access management, how to do encryption, how to implement data security, what is hashing, what is encryption, what is digital certificate, what is PKI. So this is all what is multi-factor authentication. This is all a protection techniques, okay? And once we finish this protection techniques, we started to move on to look at the responding and recovery. So if we have an incident, how can we respond from an incident? How can we recover from major incidents? And that's what when we start to talk about IR, which is incident response, and contingency planning, CB. So this is really what we have covered so far. So incident response is a process of really identifying if we have an incident or no, and then contain this incidents, and then do an eradication, and then recovery for the system, and finally we do post-incident. So we spend sometimes to talk about this. We spend it sometimes to talk about contingency planning, and then we mentioned that the contingency planning is based on something called business impact analysis. The business impact analysis is very close to the risk assessment, but we wanted to understand what is the criticality, what is the maximum tolerable time to the system to fail, how can we do recovery time objective and recover point objectives. So we talked about this in recovery, and we mentioned that we have three contingency planning methodology. We can have an incident response, we can have disaster recovery, and we can have contingency planning or business continuity side, that's like hot side or cold side. This is also we have covered so far, okay. And we said that this course that we are right now is really covering. We mentioned this is all about detection. I wanted really to detect if there is an abnormal activity, or to detect activity which is malicious within my organization. And we mentioned clearly why we have to detect after we done all this protection and responding and recover. It is because we have already new attackers that they've been emerging recently, which is the APTs and nation states, and this is our well-funded attackers. So the threats itself, guys, it's really becoming really more advanced, more hard to prevent, because the APT is very sneaky. They already know about all your prevention techniques. They can bypass these prevention techniques. So I need really detection techniques to, if they manage to bypass all my protection techniques, I really need to have detection techniques in place. Okay, we mentioned that the threats is one of the reasons that drove the whole sector of detections, and also emerging technologies and new technology that started to happening, like maybe cloud technology, bring your own device. Another reason, guys, why detection techniques is really emerging, because we have so many vulnerabilities. We have so many vulnerabilities like we never have before. So I will give you an idea about vulnerabilities in 1 second. But again, here is, for example, if we talk about vulnerabilities, I just wanted to show you a diagram here between the number of vulnerabilities that they've been discovering since 2016 all the way to 2020. Okay, so around this time here, in 2016 we will have around 5,000 vulnerabilities per year, okay? And the source NVD, this is a national vulnerability database. This is maintained by NIST. So if you visited this website, National Vulnerability Database, it will list you all the vulnerability that exist in the world, like 0-day vulnerabilities that we don't know about it. It is still uncovered. So you will not find it in the National Vulnerability Database. Okay, but I wanted to show you the trend here. So in 2016, we are almost 5,000 vulnerability has been discovered, okay? And look at the curve going here all the way to 2020, which is like 1 year ago or 2 years ago, we're almost hitting to 20,000. So this shows you that the number of vulnerability that exist is triple, okay? Why? Because there's so many new technology, things are not as secure as we really wish to be. And another also nice diagram over here, this is only Microsoft vulnerability. And Microsoft is one of the most used operating system in the whole world, okay? So we're talking about that Microsoft vulnerability over the last few years also, from 2016 all the way to 2020, you can see they used to have like 500 well-known vulnerabilities, and then look at the curve right now is going to 1,500. So we can tell also that the vulnerability in Microsoft alone as a one vendor, okay, you have so many vendors. You have Linux operating system, you have Unix, you have Mac OS. So you have so many operating system. This is only operating system, but we didn't talk about the still application. We didn't talk about network devices. We didn't talk about vulnerability existing protocols, okay? But in Microsoft alone, we have triple numbers of vulnerability that it was there in 2016. So from these two diagrams, I can tell you, okay, there is so many vulnerabilities and we really need to defend our system and detect if there is a malicious activity is happening. I just wanted to show you just very quick. Okay, so how to defend our systems in an appropriate way, and the way that I told you guys, okay, don't invent the wheel when it comes to really protect this system. You really need to follow and adapt the standard. And one of the standard that's over there that I have been emphasizing about since we started the course, there is one standard called NIST CSF, which is cybersecurity framework, which is giving you the five main function over here, that identification, protection, detection, responding, recovery. So there is this is the standard way. So you start with to understand what asset you have. You need to do a risk assessment. You start to protect the asset. You start to detect if there's any anomalies, and you should be having also incident response procedures in the place. So here, guys, we can see there's 5 functions. These are the 5 functions. Okay, under this 5 function, there is 22 categories, and these are the 22 categories. That's one that we talked about it in so many occasions, and we explained. And under all these categories, there is something called subcategories. You can see over here, there's subcategories over here, and these are around 100 subcategories. Okay, so you really need to really look into each one of these functions, each one of these categories, and what is each category is entitled for. So this is now will give you the full security program for your organization. So again, how to implement protection for an organization, you follow standard. Whether this standard is NIST or ISO 27000 or maybe COBIT, you choose a standard according to the requirement and according to what you see. But this is, I think, one of the most useful standard over there. Okay, the standard also, guys, really does have more than just what I have been telling you guys about, which is this is we call it the core function, but they have something called the implementation tiers. How good you are in doing these 5 functions. They call how mature you are when you do this function. They call it this is implementation tier. If you do it in a partial way, partial means in ad hoc way. So sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't do it. They said that this is level 1. Okay, so if you do this according to more informed risk decision, and your risk decision decision within the company becoming more mature, then you call this risk informed. And if you do this this whole 5 function and whole categories here in a proper way, they call it repeatable. And then the last thing that you wanted to reach to is adaptive, meaning even if there is a new risk has been emerged, you can easily implement these 5 functions and will be able to adapt with the new risk and really find a mitigation for it. So this is what we call the implementation and the maturity level. Okay, so the maturity level you can see going from partial all the way to adaptive, mean that when the company the first adapt this methodology, it's in this specific area. When they are becoming more mature, they will do this in a more proper way. They will be reaching to the adaptive way. And finally, they have something called the target or profiles, mean this is your company. Okay, usually when we start to implement the NIST framework, we are in this current states, and usually we are trying to hit to our target states, which we feel we are more secure when we reach there. So there is a path between both of them, and this is will take some times, because in order to implement all this function, all these categories, all these subcategories will take time. So you as a company always set yourself in a certain current profile or current situation, and then you always try to head to the target, basically to the target profile. Okay, guys. So this is the next framework. We'll be talking about maturity level and how the maturity level can be done, and what is the difference between maturity level, whether it's partial or risk informed or even repeatable or even adaptive in other lectures when we really focus in the maturity level. Okay, guys. Also, we mentioned yesterday that if you guys allow me, that your IT security program over here. Okay, so this is the IT security program is being really motivated by the business requirement, and sometimes it's motivated by compliance, and sometimes it's motivated by threats. So the business wanted to really do their jobs in a more secure way. You have some compliance or regulator out there, they pushing you to protect the company assets and the nation assets, and also your customer assets. So you have like emerging threats, the APT, the nation state, the hacktivism. These are advanced threats. So we all have in this mind, it will drive us to implement some technical controls, some physical control, and some managerial controls. But again, this is not only the way that we do it, because we are implementing control not only because the business wanted us to implement control or the compliance wanted to do controls. We also need to really identify the risk and identify the vulnerability within the system, and then enforce this risk assessment to really be the motive behind all our technical controls and physical controls and administrative controls. Okay. Yesterday, we said that the vulnerability assessment, guys, and there is another, there is another also practice that we need to do, is called penetration testing. Okay, and penetration testing basically is try to find vulnerability, is try to hack into the system, and try to identify these vulnerabilities, and try to find the severity of these vulnerabilities, and accordingly you can really recommend how to fix these vulnerabilities. Okay, guys. So we have this is our security programs, and we can see that risk identification and vulnerability are in the same exact area, because in order to really find out about the risk and really can categorize this risk, you need to find out about vulnerability. Because if you remember, guys, how the risk will be evaluated is going to be evaluated according to what assets I have, okay, what is the criticality of these assets, what is the impact of these assets, and what is the vulnerability in these assets. Okay, so this is what will give me the risk score. Okay, whether this risk score is coming from qualitative analysis or quantitative analysis. And finally, I will be able, okay, one specific area here, which is basically vulnerability assessment. And vulnerability assessment is basically to identify vulnerability within the system and try to really give a score for this vulnerability, and this is will definitely change the score for the risk. So as like if this vulnerability is really high vulnerability, the score is high, so it's really like there is a big likelihood of someone to exploit this vulnerability, the risk will be high, and then this is will drive me to implement some controls over here. So this is also another thing that you really need to focus on when we talk about this. Okay, so we mentioned vulnerability assessment, and we mentioned there is another process called penetration testing, which is important. And here is the stages of penetration testing. And as I mentioned yesterday, when we talk about the penetration testing, guys, we mentioned that penetration testing in a very simple way is to try to hack or to break the system and find where is the vulnerability is and where is the weakness point in this system. Okay, and in order to do this, we are following a methodology. Whether this methodology are coming from NIST, or whether it's coming from ethical hacking, or whether it's coming from another organization, or whether it's coming from Kill Chain, the one we have already covered before, all of them are following the same exact steps. So we all have the same steps, and these steps, by the way, guys, is a similar steps to what the attacker will do. So the attacker will do exactly the same steps here. So what can we do? First of all, we need to agree about scope. What we are gonna test. Okay, are we gonna test only technical systems, or we gonna test mobile application system, or we're gonna test web application system, or cloud application test system? This is very important to agree about. Also, we need to get permission here. So we need to implement the rules of engagement. What can we get a right permission? We get a communication with from the management, and we agreed also about what type of test it's gonna be. Is it gonna be a black box test, or gonna be white box test, or gray box test? This is according to what the company really wanted to do. So if they wanted to simulate someone from outside, they will do the black box test. If they wanted to simulate someone from inside, they will do the white test. If they want to do something in between, they will do gray box test. Okay, guys? And we mentioned that the first thing that the attacker will do, and also the defender will do, okay, is to gather information. They wanted to understand what kind of data, what kind of servers, what kind of service you are running outside. So that is this information gathering, or the footprinting or reconnaissance, is all about to find out what is the asset is that the attacker can see, and what the defender also need to protect. So this is the information gathering. And I'm pretty sure that we have covered yesterday with Abir and the rest of you guys that the information gathering is being divided into two categories. One of these categories is basically the passive category, and one of them are the active category. And the difference between them, in the passive category, I'm really not contacting the servers or not contacting the organization anyway. I'm using public information to gather information about this target or my victim. Okay, so this is what information gathering is all about. The passive one, that I'm using the public information about the company. So maybe I'm using Whois website. I'm using DNS stuff to get more data about the DNS. I'm trying to really get information about the operating system. I'm trying to get information about, what public service they have. I'm trying to get information about, what email address and what employees they work for. So this can be also all found on online. So this is this is the passive way to look at it. Okay, there is an active way also to do information gathering, and the active way to do information gathering, guys, is basically by interacting with the server. So if I have a server, okay, and this is the attacker, or this is me as a defender, okay, I will try to probe the server. Probing mean I'll try to send some packets to this server to see how this server respond, and according to the response of the servers, I can determine, if the servers is alive, what operating system is really running on this server. Okay, what kind of service are running on these servers? Can I do banner grabbing to see what kind of service running? So I understand, for example, this is a web application, this is a mail application, this is a database server. Okay, once I got all this information, the attacker, okay, or the defender will move to the next phase, which is basically vulnerability detection. I know you are running Windows 10. I know you are running web application. I know you are running this specific updates in the Windows 10. I know this ports are running on your machine. Then I will try to really sit with myself as an attacker or defender to find out what kind of what vulnerability exists in all this layer. Okay, guys. So this is gonna be the vulnerability detection. Okay. So how this is really useful for me as a SOC engineer, because this is can give me an idea what the attacker are doing, right? Okay, if I'm a security engineer or a SOC analyst, okay, and I can see someone is scanning my server, okay, then I know that my server is being a victim or a next target for an attacker. So I really can really look at what the attacker are doing, or as a SOC engineer, I can do it myself and see what the attacker will do. So one of the really benefits of being able to do penetration testing is really to find your weakness before the bad guys can find. Okay, so this is gonna give you an insight. So you either be able to detect their move against your system, or either give you the facility and tools to really look into your system and see if one of these service are vulnerability before the bad guys do it. And that's why we do penetration testing, and that's why we do ethical hacking. Okay, guys, so far so good. So I just tried to summarize what we have covered in a really, a few days ago. Any questions? Everything is clear? Okay. So only Tagreed think if everything is clear. How about the rest?
Yeah, everything clear.
Okay, perfect. So if everything is clear, again, I will just give myself 1 minute also to remind you guys the benefits of penetration testing before we start our lecture today about vulnerabilities. But before this, I will give Lina the chance to go ahead. So the benefits of penetration testing, again, is test network or system using the tools and technique that attacker use. So this is basically, it will give you the ability to find out about your weakness before the bad guys are doing. So it's evaluating your application, your systems, your network, okay, and to try to identify these vulnerabilities before the really someone can break in and cause an impact on your system, demonstrate at what depths vulnerability can be exploited. And this is the difference between vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, guys, that in vulnerability assessment, okay, we just can highlight which vulnerability exists, okay? But we really cannot tell if it's real vulnerability or no. And that's why penetration testing will come and to really validate if it's real vulnerability and how severe this vulnerability can cause us damage. So this is another thing. So the validating the vulnerability I have already discovered can provide the realism and evidence needed to address security. So once you find a valid vulnerability, once that you highlight the severity of this vulnerability, you can go back to your team and start to really work with your team how to address this vulnerability and how to protect your system. And that's again what I mentioned here in this specific diagram. That's the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing will lead to new technical controls or new physical controls or new even administrative controls to be implemented. Okay, so that's why we do penetration testing, because eventually we wanted to highlight the risk of certain vulnerability. And then one of the jobs of penetration testers is by when he validated a vulnerability and he made sure this is a real vulnerability, he can suggest to you a recommendation how to fix it. And usually the how to fix it is we call it remedies, or we call it a rectification, or we call it a fix, and usually a fix by implementing more technical controls. So this is basically a quick review for what we have already covered. So I will let now the stage with Lina. Is Lina's here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect, Lina. I will give you, I will stop my sharing and I will give you the opportunity to share. So let me look at the sharing part. Okay, so Lina. Okay, so I will just make you co-host. Okay, so you can share.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Mr. Shadi, for giving me this opportunity. Today we'll be talking about my research paper. The title of it, Cyber Attack and Solution Future Factories. The paper discussed the major technology used in manufacturing, like AI, robotics, IoT, cloud computing. And because of this technology, they are in a risk of attack. So we highlight some important of cyber attack in manufacturing. The common cyber attack are industrial espionage and information theft. So we discussed some solution on it. One of them is the manufacturing should put the clear security planning to secure data and should train the employee to be able to deal with a cyber attack like a phishing email and so on. What I want to show you here, this table about the vulnerabilities around the years, that the number of vulnerabilities was increasing from 2010 was 37 and until became into 19,694 in 2021, which is a huge number. So, and one of the impact of this that pandemic, you can see during these 2 years, the number was increased and there are many cyber attack that happens and manufacturing one of the affected. Also, we mentioned some security to achieve in future factories. They are 4 steps. The first one to be evaluate the security need of factories. The second step is the device complete approach should complete approach and plan cover all aspects. The third step is give the system examined and verified according to the requirement. And the last step to be continue keeping up the system according to the factory security policy. This is a quick overview about my research, and thank you. Do you have any question? That is
Yeah,
good.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
The question here, Lina, which sector you were covering here in the manufacturing? Is it all the sector or the oil
all
and
the
gas
sector
only?
around the
All
world.
the sector. Okay. So we can see, guys, this is like astonishing number. That's in 2010, we don't have at all, like we almost have very few vulnerabilities. But can someone really tell me what happened from 2010 to 2020 that drove all this, you know, because I just showed you guys a similar diagram, but why this number is like really going up like in a crazy way? Can someone answer me?
Because
why we have so many
really
vulnerabilities?
rely on technology, so we're gonna absolutely aggregate too much of cyber attack.
I agree. Who said that?
And
Sam.
internet also.
Sam. Yes, the internet, bravo. Who said internet?
Me, I'm Abir.
Abir, okay. So thank you, Abir. So yes, definitely, guys. You remember when we talked about the SCADA system, guys? The SCADA system, the early beginning used to be something we mentioned that is called air gap.
Yeah.
So it was and a manufacturer was not connected to the internet, but because because the generation of SCADA right now that we started to connect more and more devices to the internet, we can start to see a lot of really vulnerabilities started to show up and a lot of attacks happening against our manufacturing. I was talking to someone yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. He works in oil and gas, British Petroleum. Okay, and he said that we are now doing rigs in the middle of the sea, and it's going to be an automated rigs. And the whole topic today, and they had a meeting, and the whole topic today If it's gonna be an automated rigs, that means or everything is robotic and everything is running from a remote location. Okay, how can we secure this automated rigs? So that he said that the whole meeting was about cybersecurity. So this shows you guys that connecting to the internet is open the door for really a lot of automation and a lot of controlling over the seas and over long distance like the SCADA system. Okay, but at the same time it opened the door for the cyber attacks. But thank you, Lena, for bringing this up. It's really nice, mashallah. And Shaza is saying that IoT is also widely used. I agree with you, Shaza. And
And
IoT.
also, Mr. Shadi, and more sensitive data, it's gonna be shared and the network. It's become big.
Yes.
So the hackers excited about the sensitive data.
Exactly. So the
Yeah.
cyber espionage is really huge. I can tell you guys the cyber espionage, because think about it. Let's say that you have Aramco, right? Aramco spent years and years of how to do refinery for oil products, right? So you guys have the secrets and the trade secrets how to do refinery for products. There's another country, okay? They don't have the know-how how to do refinery. Okay, so there's two ways. Okay, either to go with a partnership with Aramco and they ask them for expertise and they pay them money for this, this is the proper way to do it, right? But we have also another countries, they don't want to really to do all of this. They wanted to steal your hard work. So they do corporate espionage or even a nation espionage to steal whatever you guys are doing right now. So this can be also can be the case between the US and also China. It's all about cyber espionage and stealing the technology between both of them. So this is really, I can tell you, this is the themes in the world right now. So let's us go back to the lecture. Okay, but thank you, Lena, again for bringing this up. It's really important.
Thank you.
So great. So let me quickly go to the lectures. But you guys, if you have any ideas about a research paper you wanted to discuss here, okay, or an idea to talk about security, or even a security solution that you think it's really amazing and you have read about it, we can always open the door for even 10-15 minutes for anyone who wanted really to bring this. And this is how we really learn and becoming more knowledgeable about cybersecurity. Okay, so we just back to what we have already covered yesterday. We covered yesterday that we gonna allow we are doing a pen testing, and the pen testing, the early beginning of pen testing, we do something called information gathering. And once we do the information gathering, we start to get some information, and the attacker now will be in the phase of analyzing this information and try to get really insights, what kind of vulnerability exists in these systems and this application. And I mentioned yesterday that our IT system consists of network, okay, and consists of operating system, firmwares, okay, and also application level. And the attacker will be, and even the human who's using the
Hello. Hi.